welcome to Bad Movie Beatdown. Looking for the adventure of a lifetime? Well, the question isn't what's real and what's recall, but what's the real version of Total Recall? And I'll give you a hint, it's not the 2012 version. Total Recall is a loose adaptation of Philip K. Dick's short story, We Can Remember It For You Wholesale. In the original story, a simple clerk called Doug Quayle goes to Recall to have the memory of a trip to Mars that he can't afford implanted, but problems soon arise when it turns out that he has been to Mars before as a government agent, but his conscious memories have been erased. But the procedure caused him to recall his past as an assassin. That same basic plotline is used for the 1990 film with the slightly renamed Douglas Quaid, played by Arnold Schwarzenegger, also having a botched recall implant to Mars, but the movie largely goes in a different direction from that point. The original film is helmed by Dutch director Paul Verhoeven, who was fresh off his 1987 success RoboCop, which itself has been remade in a competent but mediocre modern version, and is in no way why I'm doing this movie now. Verhoeven's distinctive touch is all over the original film, and like RoboCop, Total Recall is on the surface an entertaining action romp that has a sly wit and intelligence that rewards sci-fi fans. You can easily watch the film as an OTT adventure with Quaid running around shooting the bad guys, saving Mars and getting the girl, especially if your name is Arnold Schwarzenegger, or you can see the subtext that Verhoeven is suggesting, where everything after that botched recall visit is simply in Quaid's head as he lives out his fantasy within the programming. That means the earlier version of Total Recall is as much a satire of the action genre and in turn Schwarzenegger's movies and masculine wish fulfillment as it is an example of it, and because the latter works so well on its own terms, the audience is still satisfied at the end of it, which is something that a lot of films get terribly wrong, going on to be a huge hit that was the 7th highest grossing film of the year. So when it was announced there was going to be a remake, fans of the original were up in arms, because not only is it a beloved classic of the genre, but it's also one of Arnold's best movies, as well as being arguably too recent. But then again, it is as old as me. Hell, you could kind of argue that Total Recall was kind of remade once before, because Arnold attempted to recapture some of its magic in 2000's The Sixth Day, a head trip which had two literal Arnies as opposed to two personalities fighting for the same body, and contained several similarities, including Arnold waking up in a cab with no memory of how he got there at the start of his adventures. But in present Hollywood, where anything 30 years old with even a vaguely recognisable title gets rebooted, Neil H. Moritz, producer of the Fast and Furious series, took the remake out of development hell and backed it through his ironically named Original Film Production Company and set Kurt Wimmer to write the script, which he shares a credit with alongside the Wolverine's Mark Bombach. Ah, Kurt Wimmer, it's been a while, but we finally meet again. Wimmer claimed of the modernised remake that fans will love that it sticks to the structure of the original film, but it also goes back to the novel and makes a hybrid, a claim immediately contradicted when he reveals the remake doesn't have Mars in it, taking it even further from the source material. The film's directed by Len Wiseman, who is best known for the Underworld films that star his wife, Kate Beckinsale, who is also in this film coincidentally. And if you didn't know they were married, you certainly will by the end of this video. But despite a huge marketing push by Sony and a toned down PG-13 rating, audiences stuck two fingers straight up, giving it a dismal C+ cinema score exit poll, and it opened in second, beaten by The Dark Knight Rises, which had came out 3 weeks before and got its ass further handed to it a week later by not Jason Bourne. The remake became one of the biggest flops of a disappointing August. On a $125 million budget, the newer version made a mere $58 million in the US, which is half of what the Arnold film made 20 years ago. When you factor in inflation though, it actually made a quarter of what the original did, which is truly pathetic. Despite decent international business that bumped its worldwide total to $198 million, it's telling that it did so badly that Sony had to bundle the Blu-ray with a demo of God of War Ascension just to sell the damn thing. Recall famously promises that its implants are so real that you won't be able to tell the difference or your money back. So why exactly were audiences doing just that? Get your ass to the remake to find out. The film starts off by explaining that at the end of the 21st century, because chemical warfare has left much of the planet uninhabitable, humanity is divided between two remaining pieces of land, the United Federation of Britain and Australia, which is now hilariously renamed the Colony. Good Good news, British imperialists! Give it another century or so and we'll have our colonies back, and I'll put the great in Great Britain again. Rule Britannia, Britannia, rule the waves! The movie properly starts off with what appears to be a determined attempt to kill epileptic people. I think this is meant to be disorientating, but all it's doing is giving me a headache. Oh, fuck my eyes!
I cut the power. We've got about 10 seconds before that alarm brings an entire team down here.
Then what the hell is with the flashing lights? If that's the emergency lighting system, I think giving everyone seizures is going to help. So Melina, played by Jessica Biel, is rescuing Doug Quaid, played by Colin Farrell, from some sort of medical facility as you squint to see anything under the blinking. They nearly make it out, but they're shot through the hand, not that it seems that bothersome, before Quaid is tied up by a light ray gun of some kind, because I don't think I'm blind yet. Quaid lets Melina go before he's yanked back, revealing that this was all a dream. Or is it? So this replaces the Mars dream at the opening, but it also guts the film of any ambiguity. In the original, the Mars dream is mysterious and sets up the vision of the planet seen later in the film, and it has a very fantastical quality, especially when Arnold's eyes pop out. Whereas in the remake, it's so intense and vivid that there's no way of interpreting it other than a real memory, and it's a bit hard to buy him as an average Joe after that. Not that a normal bloke gets the chance to sleep with Kate Beckinsale either, inheriting Sharon Stone's part as Laurie, who is some sort of medical worker. There's been a terrorist bombing in Britain which is attributed to a resistance group led by Matthias, played by Bill Nighy, whose right hand Hauser has been responsible for a number of past attacks. Quaid goes to work, but that might be a problem if your job is on the other side of the world, right? Wrong. You see, the way the workers from the colony commute, that's just casually explained in the opening, is in a giant tunnel called the Fall that goes through the centre of the earth and out the other side. No, really, we're just meant to accept that every day thousands of workers travel past the Earth's core in a journey that apparently takes just 17 minutes, which I'm pretty sure is a speed impossible to ascertain. The pressures these guys must face is immense, and if the speed they're going at doesn't make them burst into flames, how about the fact this journey requires a small trip alongside the Earth's core that you think would be a bit toasty, but the only impact is a feeling of weightlessness due to the gravitational shift. How exactly in an Earth depleted of resources does one manage to cut through the centre of the planet and construct something like this? This must have taken years to build, not to mention it has the kind of physics that would shame a Wile E. Coyote cartoon. When your reality is this implausible, how the hell are we meant to tell where the fantasy even begins? Quaid works in a factory building robots along with his friend Harry, played by Bokeem Woodbine, and Quaid is tempted to go to recall.
Hey, what do you know about recall?
That mind altering shit?
Yeah.
Do yourself a favor, Doug. Stay away from them.
Why's that?
Remember Travis from Shift 3? Went to recall for his bachelor party. Wanted to be king of Mars or some shit.
I'd like to go to Mars.
Got himself lobotomized.
Ah, clever. They just recapped the entire plot of the first film. I'm sure this won't be the first in a deluge of redundant references towards the earlier movie. Quaid helps train new employee Merrick, played by Will Yun Lee, who has a much more positive opinion on this recall thing and encourages Doug to go.
Whoa, whoa, whoa! Don't hold it like that. Hold it here. You hold it there and it cinch shorts. One of those bolts will shoot straight through your hand.
No shit, huh?
No shit. Thanks.
I like how immediately after being told that, he goes right back to holding it incorrectly. No wonder this character never reappears again after this scene. He has to be hospitalised because he shot a bolt through his hand on the first day. With a failed promotion firmly cementing Quaid's midlife crisis, he heads to the red light district looking for recall. You know, I get what the production design is trying to do. The colony is meant to have this pan-Asian vibe to it with constantly bleak downpouring weather. Except all I can think about is how much this looks exactly like the set of Blade Runner, although maybe that's kind of intentional as that is another Philip K. Dick adaptation. Oh, and speaking of reminding me of far better movies I could be watching.
Seem like you're looking for something. Is it this? You're gonna wish you had 3 hands.
I'm looking for recall. You know where I can find it?
Stairway to heaven, over there.
Thank you.
Everyone loves the 3 boob chick from the original, so let's just throw it in there for the fans. I mean, there's no mutants in this version, so this makes no sense. And it's the definition of gratuitous because the scene is completely pointless otherwise, but we're showing respect to the original. while we remake it. But don't worry, we'll make everything look shiny and new because we'll cover the frame in wall-to-wall lens flares. Seriously, they are everywhere in this flick and incredibly distracting. Hell, almost every light source in the frame will glare across it or even block out the figures in the foreground on occasion. Yeah, that's great cinematography. It's clearly been borrowed from J.J. Abrams' Star Trek, but even he would find this excessive. Oh, look, Ma! I'm in the future! Ooh, sparkles! Quaid goes into recall and asks for Mac, played by John Cho, whose 3 minutes of screen time represents the brief amount this new version elevates itself to being good.
Tell us your fantasy. We'll give you the memory. You want to be rich and famous? Worshipped by millions? Secret agent, that's you, right? Clandestine bank accounts, coded messages.
Secret agent, I could do that.
Yeah, as an intelligence operative. You could be working for the Resistance. Ooh, maybe you work for Cohagen. Or why limit yourself? Why not both?
Can I have the package that doesn't copy all the familiar beats in the original, including the foreshadowing, and actually tries to do something new? It's a somewhat telling difference between the two films that we see many of the choices Doug made in the 1990 version, whereas the 2012 reboot just skips ahead to him having the procedure and just being warned about the dangers of conflicts if what he's told is true. They run a check on his mind, but everything seems fine until the drugs are administered, when Mac pulls a gun exclaiming Quaid's a spy, before a whole bunch of police burst in and kill all the staff around Quaid as they attempt to arrest him. That single-shot takedown of all those men was really cool. What a shame then they won't do anything even remotely as competent for the rest of the running time. Quaid locks himself in as the second team arrive, who shoot in a device that sprays cameras all over the room, but oddly only use it to see if the men before them are all dead, rather than, you know, checking what their suspect is doing, namely using grenades to blow a hole in the floor. If only he had a camera in there so he could see what he was doing and plan accordingly. Those 30 or so in there just weren't enough. So Quaid makes his escape and rushes back home to Laurie, where he explains what happened to him at recall. But if you're familiar with the story, you'll know she turns out to be less than sympathetic and instantly tries to kill him, as well as being surprisingly British. Little known fact, if you throw someone bum first into a skylight, it will instantly untie their hair.
Tell me what is going on.
I'm UFB police intel, assigned to play your wife. 6 weeks ago, I didn't even know you.
What are you talking about?
Your memory was replaced. Your mind was implanted with a life you think you've lived. There is no Douglas Quaid, there never was.
Our marriage.
What can I say? A give good wife. Deep down, did you really believe someone like me would marry someone like you? Live in this shithole.
Yeah, I bet you give good wife to the director to be cast in this role. And to the second point, you're an attractive Kate Beckinsale married to a handsome Colin Farrell. What exactly is so unbelievable here? But it's soon back to aggressive arguing, and once again Quaid escapes by smashing through a hole in the floor, because buildings in this universe are stacked on top of each other like Tetris blocks. I know because of the dense population they're building upwards, but these buildings seem to float, and this chase scene resembles a level from a platform game with all the jumping around. Up a level, down a level, just dive off, I'm sure someone's house will break your fall. That police bot, the ones they build in the factory that Doug works for, will be the primary threat for most of the film. And Doug just took it out completely unarmed in about 15 seconds flat. Talk about faceless henchman. Quaid finally gets away by diving down to yet another level, giving police the slip. Laurie puts Quaid's phone back on the grid and he swiftly gets a call from an old co-worker of his named Hammond, who tells him to look for the key and to get rid of the phone because they're using it to track him, which is a tiny bit difficult because it's inside his hand. Nevertheless, he breaks a glass bottle and cuts open his palm with a shard and just pulls the electronics out with a minimum of fuss. This is in theory a gorier scene than the equivalent of him pulling the bug out of his brain, or at least it would be if it wasn't sanitized for a PG-13. The concept of having phones in your hand is ridiculous, especially since they'll be using throughout the whole... Oh, hold on, I gotta take this one. Yellow? Yeah, I'm talking to you on my hand, mate, isn't it great? Yeah. I'm gonna get the new model next week, put myself into surgery and everything! Yeah, I should have to use my fingers back in about a month. It even looks silly when Laurie takes a call from her boss, UFB Chancellor Cohagen, played by Bryan Cranston.
How the hell did he get activated?
An agent in place told me he'd gone to recall. I sent a team in, but his memory implant had been blown before they could get to him.
No lethal force. I want him alive. Do you understand?
Who the hell is this guy, sir?
Take me off display.
Are you fucking kidding me? We kill him on sight.
But the Chancellor said...
I'm sorry, say again?
I'm going to disobey that direct order because I feel like it. I'm sure my boss has no reason to keep one of his former agents alive, so I'll just keep on acting like a crazy, impulsive bitch. I think part of the reason that things like this are grating on me is because the remake takes itself way too seriously. The earlier film is meant to get more and more outlandish and far-fetched, but it's lined with Verhoeven's oddball humour that lies in its own excess and is aware of itself. Even the casting of Arnold is a sly one, as he's part action star, part cartoon, who has a sense of humour about himself and his image. I mean, this is a film where at one point he runs around with a wet towel over his head, and at another disguises himself as a fat lady. This humour is entirely absent in the 2012 redo, which means it loses a lot of its personality, especially Colin Farrell, who has spent the entire movie looking perplexed. It's not that Farrell's a bad actor, because he's proved by now that he isn't. It's just that he keeps getting cast as an action hero to try and turn him into a leading man, and that makes him suppress everything about him that's interesting, including his accent. It's not really his fault, but he ends up being left accountable for the failure regardless. Before he took out the phone, he got a message directing him to a bank with a safety deposit box in his name inside. Or is that names? Because he finds a number of passport aliases for his disguises, along with gadgets and cash. Ooh, sweet Obama bills! Those are better than Hillary's! Of course, this reveals yet another inspiration for the remake, as this scene has a distinctly Bourne-esque vibe, given it's a blatant copy of a similar scene Identity.
They're gonna be coming for me any second, so I need to make this quick. If you're watching this, it means I failed to escape. It means they succeeded in giving you a new name, a new identity. The most important thing for you to do now is get to my apartment, 549 Hysperion Block D. You found the key, and you know what to do with it. Good luck.
What key?
Good luck, buddy.
What?
If he's recording that in the hospital and he got recaptured at the end of that clip, then how the hell did it end up in his safety deposit box? And why would it encrypt itself after one playthrough rather than at the start? Didn't catch that address? Well then you're screwed, matey. Quaid takes the fall to London in disguise, but boy does that woman in front look familiar.
Hold it. So I'm gonna have to ask you to step through the scanner again, please.
How long are you here?
2 weeks.
Enough with the references to the original. Stop playing around with our memories of the old one and make some new ones. You're only emphasising how little personality this has by comparison. Quaid's disguise turns out to be a bit shit, and he's soon on the run from the police again, and oh joy, Laurie arrives soon after. Once again he evades them by going onto a different level, but this time he's lifted up onto the Sky Road. By the powers of massive convenience, Melina pulls up just at this second to pick Quaid up as the police cars come after him. Or maybe this is because it's a program recall fantasy and that's how she managed to show up just then. Nah, let's just call it lazy screenwriting. It's much more fun that way. So now we're in a hover car chase, and you know, this also feels like it comes from another Philip K. Dick adaptation. It's clearly invoking that bit in Minority Report where John Anderton climbs and jumps across the cars on the track to avoid the police. Are they just going to keep ripping off bits and pieces from other Philip K. Dick movies, just call it a day? At this rate, they're not far off cribbing from bloody Paycheck. This lengthy sequence is unfortunately rather dull, mostly because it's synthetic. Nearly all the baddies except for lawyer robot cops, it's hard to tell who's shunting who, and the pervasive CGI is so cartoony it looks as weightless as the cars. And about halfway through they move down several levels yet again, so now they're on the underside of the road. I swear, whoever devised these action sequences must find lift rides absolutely fascinating. They get surrounded by the police, but Quaid simply punches out the magnetic lock holding up the car, dropping out of the sky, and handily lands on a bunch of other cars parked on the ground in the middle of Westminster. Since these cars, the old-fashioned car wheels, who the hell owns these? How do they get to the places above the surface? Do rich people just not travel? And why does this vision of the future keep making less and less sense the more you think about it? Carrying an unconscious Melina, Quaid goes to the apartment that his past self told him to go. Investigating around, he finds nothing at first until he starts casually playing the piano, a skill that he previously didn't know he had, and for a brief moment there's a sense of wonder and identity that's been sorely lacking. It's then he notices that one key is actually a fake, and realises that that is the key he's been constantly told about, and places a black bar he found in the safety deposit box in its place, activating a hidden recording from his past self, who identifies as Carl Hauser. Now here's where things get interesting. Originally, and in the director's cut, Hauser is played by Ethan Hawke in a small cameo, and they underwent plastic surgery to become Quaid. However, the filmmakers obviously got cold feet about this, deleting all references in the theatrical cut, and reshot the message with Farrell as Hauser, only now with a goatee, so now it looks like he's receiving a message from the Dead Man Down universe. This concept is fairly interesting and it explains how no one recognised him, which is more of a hole in the remake because it takes itself more seriously. And it's a shame it was deemed too complex for their intended audience of idiots and they erased it, resulting in some terrible effects with them having to hastily change it. Ah! It wasn't in the original! Fix it! Fix it! Fix it! Otherwise, the content is the same in both versions, with Hauser explaining he was sent to infiltrate the resistance by Cohagen, but Melina made him change his mind, and that the real bad guys are the Brits, who plan to invade the colony, kill everyone in it, and rebuild, with Cohagen replacing the workers with his robot army for the sake of, living space? And the only way to stop him is the robot's kill code that Hauser got a look at, so it should be in Quaid's head if Matthias accesses it. So, let me get this straight. He wants to commit genocide on one of the last main pockets of humanity on the planet to solve an overcrowding problem that's in no way apparent. It's not exactly as simple as he owns the air so he suffocates him to prove a point now, is it? You got what you wanted, Cohagen! Give these people housing! Doesn't have the same ring. Melina wakes up and further adds to Quaid's confusion by explaining that his dream is in fact a real memory, and that the scar on his hand was when they were shot through it in the attempted rescue, as she has a matching one on her own palm, and she was trying to save him because they were lovers. But Quaid's belief is about to be tested when they rush out only to discover the building is surrounded, and Harry has been brought in to talk Doug down.
Hey, what are you doing here?
They sent me in for you.
Who sent you in?
You don't get it. I don't mean they sent me in here. I mean they sent me into your mind.
What are you talking about?
You're not really here, Doug. You're still back at Recall, strapped to a chair.
Back at Recall?
He's lying.
Whoa, 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 whoa!
Lying!
This is a major scene from the original that they've copied, and they've strained to put a new spin on it, but it really doesn't work, and it only goes to show how the Wiseman film goes awry. In the earlier film, Quaid is confronted by Dr. Edgemar, a Recall developer, who asks him to take a pill to stop the delusion, and he makes a very convincing case, to the point where Quaid nearly goes through with it. In the remake, Harry is quickly caught in a lie, and immediately tries to psychoanalyze his way out of it. I only lie because you wanted me to. What the hell does that even mean? But instead, this scene goes on.
There's no getting out of your own head, Doug. But you can escape this nightmare if you let me help you.
And on.
How can you help me?
You have to shoot her, Doug.
What now?
And on.
Come on back, Doug.
I can't let them take you away.
Of course you can't do it. She's not real.
For goodness sake, get to the bloody point already! If you've seen the original, you know what happens, and even if you haven't, there's been nowhere near enough foreshadowing for this to be effective or tense, and the scene is so massively overextended the outcome is inevitable. And while it greatly lengthens the scene, the remake also guts it of much of its meaning. Verhoeven's film clearly implies there is indeed a delusion, and one of the key elements is that Edgemar predicts all the remaining plot turns in advance.
The walls of reality will come crashing down. 1 minute you'll be the savior of the rebel cause, and the next thing you know, you'll be Cohagen's bosom buddy. You'll even have fantasies about alien civilizations, as you requested, but in the end, back on Earth, you'll be lobotomized.
Quaid's decision to kill Edgemar is instigated by Edgemar sweating, which he interprets as nerves from bluffing, as opposed to simply nerves from the situation. Quaid actually makes the wrong choice subtextually, and sure enough, the walls instantly explode and bad guys pour in. The remake substitutes personal friendship for authority, but that means the scene loses much of its credibility in the process.
Shoot her! Kill her, damn it! Shoot!
Her crying shouldn't be the instigating factor. If she's indeed a product of Quaid's imagination, then what's to stop her from doing that? It's not like she hasn't had emotions before now, and the only thing that results is yet another action sequence. Like so many things in the remake, it's been divorced of meaning and consequence. So guns ablaze and Laurie springs back into action as Quaid and Melina run to a lift going down again, yet somehow Laurie has beaten them down there. Wait, how the hell did she manage to miss just then?
I suppose I should be calling you Hauser. I really thought you were a loser. Turns out I was living with the greatest intelligence agent alive. But I know what you are. You're a traitor, Hauser, and traitors get put to death. So you might want to give your little girlfriend a kiss goodbye, as long as she doesn't mind where those lips have been. I'm ending this bit.
Please do, Melina. Do us all a favour and stop us from watching Kate Beckinsale vamping up terribly, because the director wanted to show just how tough his wife is and had a bad girl fetish he wanted to scratch. I mean, there's nothing conceptually wrong with merging the characters of Laurie and Richter, played by Michael Ironside in the 1990 film, together. They were lovers after all. It's just that after a while you get really sick of Kate Beckinsale giving her worst performance since Van Helsing and wish she'd go away for a bit. But instead, Len Wiseman keeps thrusting her in your face. In other words, Len Wiseman has come down with a serious case of Paul W.S. Anderson syndrome, where their films exist solely as vehicles to show off their wives at the sake of everything else, even if they're playing the villain. Quaid and Melina escape into the lift, and it turns out in this film's universe, lifts are actually cubes that travel around all the intersected buildings in a way that's conceptually impossible. Laurie and her robots follow them in, and this sequence looks more like a level out of Portal, jumping on different cubes that move randomly. Oh good, it's a reference to Richter's death in the first film, except it's done with the robots. There's no gore or impact that might jeopardise that precious PG-13 rating, and the film in no way sees the irony of this. The lift opens somewhere, I don't know, and Laurie has again managed to beat them there. How the hell does she know where it was going and manage to get there so quickly? They start to go down, but Laurie slides in through the open roof, followed swiftly by another robot, and they start fighting inside the lift. Quaid quickly handles the robot, bisecting it anemically through the malfunctioning door, but Melina has more trouble with Laurie in the girl-on-girl action as Laurie plants a bomb and dies out. Come on. Okay, wait. Go on. Blimey, I hope no one was in that old one where it blew up. I'm sure it's fine. Yeah. As they make it outside, they learn on the news that the UFB is claiming that Matthias' resistance is funded by the colony to justify the invasion, and know that they need to find him ASAP. Melina knows exactly how to get to him, taking Quaid to a tube station travelling out of the UFB.
After the wars,
no one would be crazy enough to come out here. Everyone stays out of the no zone.
Yeah, you gotta stay out of the no zones, they're dangerous. In fact, the UFB actually came up with a catchy jingle to help people remember.
No zones! Stay out of the no zone!
These chemically poisoned areas also don't make a whole bunch of sense, because they're obviously in close proximity given it's accessible on the London Underground lines, so it must be on the city's outskirts and cover much of Britain as well. But then how the hell is the Greater London area completely unaffected?
They gotta keep them alive so Film Brain can review this movie when it hits DVD.
Truth. Have fun, Matthew.
Yeah.
They get to Matthias's hideout and Quaid confronts the man himself, who in the director's cut is Melina's father, which makes no difference to anything.
I want to remember, so I can be myself, be who I was.
It is each man's quest to find out who he truly is, but the answer to that lies in the present, not in the past. The past is a construct of the mind, but the heart wants to live in the present. Look there. You'll find your answer.
Okay, I get that when the world's population moves on to the only two remaining land masses, the accent may change, but why does everyone in the UFB speak with an American accent? Hell, this movie is full of evil Brits, but the only one actually doing the accent is Kate Beckinsale. They even got Bill Nighy, who was English as tea and crumpets, doing an American accent. It's just wrong. They access Quaid's mind and find the kill code in his memory, but it's a trap, and it turns out the memory was used by Cohagen to track Matthias. Robots burst in at just that second and take control. Again, how they managed to get to that location so quickly, clearing the way for Laurie and Cohagen, who has finally decided to enter in person, and his first action is to kill Matthias. This movie has a serious problem when it comes to wasting its supporting cast. People like Bill Nighy don't get 5 minutes of screen time before they're casually discarded like nothing. And Bryan Cranston may be a fantastic actor, but there's not much he can really do when the main antagonist shows up for the last 30 minutes of a 2-hour film. They might as well have saved their efforts and not shown up at all. The fact that Quaid was all part of the plan and it was an organised setup by Cohagen and Hauser? Yeah, Laurie was a bit of a moron going against orders like that, given she's only tried to kill him 20 million times. With the Resistance's leader dead and Melina captured, they get Quaid into the chair to revert his memory back to Hauser's. Like a typical bad guy, Cohagen just leaves before it even starts because I'm sure everything will go okay. Except that Hammond is one of his men, who cuts one of the restraints so Quaid can free himself and helps him take the others out, but ends up getting shot once he's served his narrative purpose. So what, he was Hauser's friend, so that Hauser intends to be a triple cross against Cohagen? Or is this simply a lazy Deus Ex Machina they hadn't actually thought through? I'm not sure it was meant to be this confusing. Quaid takes the team's helicopter and flies to the Fall, where Cohagen and thousands of robots are about to make the trip to the colony. Planting several bombs around the shuttle, he storms one of the cargo bays to retrieve Melina. They get captured by guards, alerting Laurie and Cohagen to their presence, but luckily for them, it's just as the shuttle reaches the gravitational shift near the core, and Quaid takes advantage of the sudden weightlessness to shoot them and get away, locking themselves in the chamber with the dormant robots. But now they're trapped.
Attention, emergency hatch cannot deploy.
What are you doing?
Zero gravity.
Hauser, these doors don't open for a reason.
We wait till it passes the core, then we go.
Gravity reversing.
That's right, you can just open the emergency hatch, but don't do it right next to the core, because that's the only place on the inside of the Earth where it's hot. Not to mention the forces of the descent that would have been sucked out by the decompression and the exterior would be scalding. It's not cerebral sci-fi if it insults your intelligence. So Quaid and Melina make their way up the side of the Fall. Okay, the Verhoeven film is an openly nonsensical finale where Mars is terraformed in minutes, but that was clearly intentional and meant to be a Deus Ex Machina, and there was a sense of escalation to the unfurling of logic that meant it worked in context. Yes, the fall and them climbing up is ridiculous, but not much more so than everything else in the film, and certainly not enough for you to question its logic in the same way, so you just look at it from face value, from which point point, it looks preposterous. They make it to the top, but Cohaagen is ready for them and shoots both of them individually in the shoulder and arm as the fall reaches its destination. Cohaagen captures Quaid and prepares to execute him, but Melina sneaks into the aircraft bay and lifts up one of the helicopters, blasting away Cohaagen's men. If these helicopters were parked from the UFB side, wouldn't they be on the underside of the ship where no one would be able to get to them? Unless these choppers weren't parked from the colony? That leads Quaid to battle it out with Cohaagen, whilst Laurie takes command of the robots, who detect the bombs too late to do anything and they blow up. But of course we had to make a big deal about Laurie diving out of the way of several explosions because heaven forbid we try to kill her off. Just die already! You're the villain in an action movie! It has to happen at some bloody point eventually! The explosions fatally rupture the links holding up the fall, which begins to buckle, as Quaid gets the upper hand over Cohaagen and stabs him with his own blade. As the fall begins to do just that, Quaid and Melina run and jump onto the edge beside it, whilst Cohaagen wakes up just in time for it to blow up mid-descent for no apparent reason, as opposed to all the other times where it didn't. Maybe it was having a belated reaction to those intense G-forces and burning up. It's as good an answer as any. Quaid, however, is unconscious from the leap. He wakes up in an ambulance and Melina is there to greet him. Or is she? He realises the scar on her hand is missing and attacks her because it is in fact Laurie wearing the hologram necklace Quaid dropped at the airport. That's right, she's still not bloody dead and managed to escape the fall, but Quaid soon rectifies that with a bullet to the chest. Shoot her again, just be safe.
A new page in history has been turned as the invasion so many feared ended with the destruction of the Gaul, a longtime symbol of economic and political oppression.
It was? I thought it was a means of transportation that allowed people from the colony to go to work. Yay, freedom! Most of us are now unemployed and completely cut off from the rest of humanity! Reunited with the real Melina, Quaid suddenly gets a feeling that things may not be all they appear when he looks at a recall advert and in the director's cut notices his recall tattoo has disappeared, which it could have done anyway. Oh well, let's embrace. This is a far cry from the original, which deliberately ends with a long fade to white coming from the sunrise, which is meant to potentially symbolise that Quaid is being lobotomised just as threatened earlier, and there is merely a dream. In the remake, the realisation comes with a half-hearted shrug, as if to say, well, maybe it isn't real, but who cares? And frankly, it's too late to start playing a game it hasn't bothered with for the rest of the movie. The Total Recall remake is a memory you'll want to forget. It's the archetypal example of something that's been remade purely because of name recognition. It does virtually nothing new and actually follows many of the same plot beats of the 1990 film in order. And it's definitely not a readaptation because it strays even further from the source material. It has nothing to add and in many cases has less because it removes much of the subtext. You could argue that it makes it more ambiguous, but when you strip all the fantasy out, it barely tries to even suggest an alternate reality and even less reason to care. As such, the leads have nothing to work with apart from Kate Beckinsale, whose role has expanded to the point of overbearing because Len Wiseman keeps flaunting her, and if their roles are thin, then the supporting cast are virtually non-existent, being on screen for mere moments and then exit never to be seen again. The only thing the movie cares about is going from one CGI action scene to the next, all of them repetitive and like a video game with endless anonymous robot bad guys that makes it feel like a sequel to I, Robot, which makes sense given how derivative it is of almost every major sci-fi film made in the last 30 years. Wipe your memory of this tiresome mediocrity and go watch the original, see the same ideas executed without compromise, and it's a hell of a lot more entertaining because of it. I'm Matthew Buck, beating down bad movies everywhere.